Welcome to the American Institute of Architects Kansas City Chapter's Legends and Leaders program. This series highlights AIA architects and others that have helped shape our community, lead the AIA, and mentor a new generation of designers. Tom Nelson is a founding principal of BNIM. In this role and in his personal time, Tom has continuously been involved in civic affairs, particularly those affecting the physical shape of Kansas City. Tom's commitment to the city can be validated by a wide variety of professional and civic activities he has led. He was a founder of the AIA Kansas City Chapter Urban Design Committee, former chairman of the Kansas City Planning Commission, and past chairman of the Downtown Council Land Use Committee, the MARC Urban Core Growth Strategies, and the Chamber of Commerce Light Rail Committees. At a national level, in 2009, Tom completed a 3-year term as regional director for the national chapter of the AIA. Throughout his career, Tom has been widely recognized and honored for his design skills and regarded for his judgment in urban issues and urban design. Tom is a graduate of the University of Kansas. Let's meet Tom.
So let's start with some of your early aspirations about becoming an architect.
I always liked to draw, and even from early times in kindergarten, there was a family story, in fact, that one of our parents' friends were over, and I had some of my portfolio from kindergarten, and he said, "Tommy, those are pretty good." And I said, "I'm the bestest artist in the room." You can laugh, can't you?
Yeah.
Took me back. That's like Johnny Carson. Anyway, so I always liked to draw, and I was aware of visual things. I could think back and really looked at things and kind of dissected them. So that's where it started, and I really didn't make that decision until I went to junior college in St. Joe, where I grew up. And people always said, "Oh, you ought to be an architect," and I was stubborn, and I kind of waved them off. But when I was went to that first year in junior college, by the way, I'm a big fan of junior colleges, and it was that year that I decided, I'll go to KU and enroll in architecture, and that's what I did, and no regrets so far.
Wonderful. 50 years later, 70 years later, 100 years later. So Tom, we want to hear about your early career, your most influential mentors and some of your early projects. What happened? What was your early career like?
Well, when I graduated from KU in, what was it, 59, 60, there was one firm in Kansas City that was better than any other. You couldn't say that today when, there's 10 really good firms. But at that time, it was Kivett and Myers, and I don't think there's any debate about that. They were the foremost firm in doing new things and doing modern design. That's where you wanted to work. And when I came out, I was unable to because they didn't offer me a job. And I went to work with for Marshall and Brown, which is really a good, solid firm, and had done a lot of schoolwork. And I worked with them, and after about a year, I was asked to do a project that I really didn't want to work on. And they decided they did not want to have people in their office who told them what they would work on and not. I just can't believe that I did that. But youth does those kind of things, and so they let me go, as they should have. And I went to Texas to CRS, which was then a really hot firm. And they're a young firm, and they were doing some innovative things, and particularly schoolwork. And they were taking on a lot of people. It was still a really small firm. And I got a job with them, and I worked there about a year. And here we go again. They gradually started laying off those people they had hired. And I was in that line somewhere. I wasn't unhappy about that. I didn't like Houston. So I came back and I did work for Kivett Myers at that point. And I enjoyed that a whole lot. And then I had an opportunity to go to Cambridge, Boston, and work for Jose Luis Sirp Jackson and Gorley. I then did a little project on my own. I had an opportunity to do that in Hannibal, Missouri. It's kind of fun, and I made some money and decided to go to Europe. And London was kind of the obvious choice. And I got there at a time when architects were really in demand, and I could have had 20 jobs. But I chose a firm that was just terrific. I don't want to use the term boutique, because it was a lot more than that. In fact, they were doing housing at Harlow, Newtown, and things like that. And so I worked there for 2 years, and just a great experience. Wonderful people and several mentors there. And I was tempted to stay, but when I was out on the circuit of CRS and so on, Kansas City was always out there off my shoulder, and I kind of knew that's where I wanted to end up. I liked Kansas City, and I thought it was a place where it was a puddle the size that I could make a little splash, maybe. And I think it's worked out. But that's how I got to Kansas City. And again, I went to work for Kibbett Myers, and all these places that I worked, I'll tell you, that still the best experience, best architectural experience was at Kibbett Myers. And it was mostly because of their system, where you weren't locked into design, or you weren't locked into construction documents, but if you were the project manager, you were likely to be the project designer and the project manager, doing contract documents, and even construction management. So it was just a great place to work. I ultimately became director of design there.
So Tom, we want to hear about your early career, your most influential mentors and some of your early projects. What happened? What was your early career like?
Well, for years at Kibbett Myers, I learned that 3 of my colleagues were planning to open a firm on their own, and ultimately they invited me to join them. And that was Bruce Batty, Bill Love, Bob Berkeball, and then myself. And it seemed like an odd combination of people. We were very different, Bob and me, and then Bill and Bruce. A lot of bees in there. But the idea was that because we were different, we would bring different notions, not different ideas, different philosophies to the firm, and we would be stronger and better for that.
So I'm wondering if you have a particular design philosophy. What do you think makes a good building?
Well, we didn't have a particular. We certainly did not have a style that we brought with us when the PBNL was formed. But I think there was always a philosophy in the background. When I was at KU, I don't know what year it was, but they had a magazine, quarterly magazine. I think they did with the AE, and they asked me to write an article for it, and I wrote one called Discerning Followers. The idea was that there are not many geniuses out there. Thank God we have some who lead the way, and we all look and listen and follow in the best of ways. And that's what I think we were. We were discerning followers, and we were not great creators, but we were good synthesizers, and could bring ideas of others without copying. I'm not talking about that, but bringing these ideas together that we then made into pretty good buildings.
Well, during your career, you sustained an effective working relationship with your partners over an extended period of time. In fact, won the National Design Award of the Year for the National Firm of the Year Award for the AIA. What do you think were the keys to that success, working with your partners and in that firm and making such a fine firm?
First of all, you have to have basic respect for the people you're working with, pardon me. And there has to be a feeling of equality. Not that I would do something. It would be that each of us had our strong points, and we all brought something to the office. And I'm not saying the projects, because we didn't very often work together on a project. It happened, but it was mostly that we all contributed in pretty equal ways to different things. So I think that's really the key to it, and also that there's somewhat of it's a balance of a hands-off approach, but also having critiques as part of getting the project done.
So your firm was started by you and Bob and also Bruce Patty, who passed in the 1990s, in 1998, but he was a AIA national president and an important member of your firm. Would you like to give a little overview about Bruce?
Well, yeah, because he was such an important part of this firm. As a matter of fact, he started. I'm sure he was the first to put this whole thing together. He had a powerful personality. He was a very creative guy. He could be a bully, and there are things not to like about Bruce. But I'll tell you, in the early years particularly, he made such a difference to this firm. He was people liked him, and gravitated toward him, and he really was able, through a strange set of circumstances, to get us the HST building, Truman building, and that's really what got us going. But that was mainly Bruce. We wouldn't have gotten it without Bruce. So yeah, good news and bad news. But he made a huge contribution to the firm. When he went to Washington and became AIA president, we simply lost him for probably 3 years. And then something happened, and we ultimately split up.
Tom, I was wondering if you want to talk more about some of your projects.
3, 4 that always come to my mind with a question like that. One is, one of the first ones was, and it really made the break for us as a young firm, was HST, Harry Truman, the Truman office building in Jefferson City. That was the biggest state building in the state of Missouri at that time, 950,000 square feet. And it was a very complex thing, and I think it turned out well. 50 years later, it's still a very efficient space for them. 950,000 square feet does not dominate the Capitol, and that's the way it was intended. And it does not dominate the downtown of Jefferson City. So I think it did what it was supposed to do.
Tom, at the zoo, there's the Doremus entrance pavilion at the zoo is a very dramatic building that you designed. What was the inspiration for that?
Well, it started with Bob Berkebau's idea about when people came to the zoo, they transitioned into this natural world and left the other humdrum world behind. And we were trying to accommodate that transition. It's when you get to the entrance, by the time you got out of that building, you were in this kind of different mood, different space. And that was really hard to find get your arms around that. But I talked to the zoo director, Terry Dobson, a couple of days before I had a presentation, which I was totally unprepared for. And he talked about what we need is something exciting. We need drama. We need theater. And somehow I realized that that's what he was at. That kind of image was what he was after. And I came back to the office to doodle and develop that shape, sort of conch shell with something rising from it. And made a sketch of it and took it to him the next day. He thought it was wonderful. We went forward with this one Kansas City place, which at that time, I mean, it still is the tallest building in Missouri by, that's what Larry Bridges, the developer, wanted. But I feel good about the form of it. It really was, the root of that form was the broad shoulders of the City Hall and the courthouse done in the 30s. And we worked off of that. And so we had this slender piece coming up and then the broad shoulders like the City Hall and the courthouse. And I think it's a successful building. And I think one of my favorite projects of all, and partly because there were so many people involved who contributed to it, including it's the nexus where at Nelson Atkins, where the old building connects with Stephen Hall's new block addition, right at that place where they connect, was a very difficult problem. The grand stairs that didn't go anywhere was Chris McBoy's. And Stephen had some strange ideas about how that ought to be resolved, but in any case, the way it comes together, the way we put it together, the kind of research we had to do about plasters and marble and stone, it was a memorable project, and I'm still proud of it when I walk into it. Incidentally, it was probably my swan song. That was the last, just about the last project, major project that I was involved with.
Tom, other people have had a substantial impact on your career, and I wondered if you'd like to say a few words about them. One that comes to mind is both Clarence Kivett and Ralph Myers.
Yeah, of course. Clarence Kivett was a mentor to a number of people, including me. And surprisingly, I never saw Clarence Kivett design anything. But where his strength was as a mentor is he singled out people like me, and there are many of us, and let us have a go at it, so to speak. And if he thought we were on the right track, he'd stand behind us. And you always knew that he had our backs. And in front of a client, whatever. And that was a great feeling. And that I think is his strength in building that firm. And he had the good judgment to bring on Ralph Myers just before the war. And Ralph was truly a good designer. He was a really good designer. And later, when I came in contact with Ralph, he had kind of lost interest in leading design. And he had a couple of projects that he worked on, but he was not super active, and not that his presence was not that well known in the office. But he was a driving force for the design quality and the effort to be modern and to use modern ideas and so on. Yeah.
So the executive director of AIA during the 70s, 80s, early 90s was Linda Young, and you were very close with Linda.
Well, I think you'll find a lot of people who would like to talk about Linda Young. She made all the presidents look good, and I loved her, and I mean, she just so helpful. And one of the best execs, I think, around or in the country at that time. And she's been a role model ever since, and we've had some marvelous execs since then. But she set the pattern, and it was remarkable. Kansas City AIA is one of the best, if not the best chapter in America. And that started, by the way, by Linda Young. Because when I first came here, it was just kind of a get-together in your basement. But Linda really brought structure to it, and we do have an excellent chapter. And when you go to Washington, you hear that.
So Tom, you've been very active in the AIA yourself and in the civic community here in Kansas City. What made you get so active, and what were some of the things that you worked on? Why did you do so much work in the city and in AIA?
Well, we all were really active in Kansas City. We tried to, with Chamber of Commerce or Downtown Council. I was chairman of the Plan Commission. All those things gave us an authority where we could influence things in Kansas City. And it's a great marketing tool. That is not why we did it. We did it because we got involved in all those things because we like being involved and we like the city and love the city.
What advice would you give to young architects today? What do you think they need to be doing?
That anything we do, there's somebody that does it better. Obviously, our consultants in engineering, mechanical engineering, structural, they do those things better than we do. Contractors are better at scheduling. Contractors know costs better than we do, and so on. But there's one thing that we have that nobody else can do, and that is we make good places and good spaces. And we own that. And I think the best course we could take is to focus on those strengths and make that our thing.
Thank you very much for your time today. We've appreciated it very much, and you've had some great wisdom that I think people will appreciate for years and years.
Well, thank you. It's my honor. And I think it's a great thing again. I think it's a really good thing you're doing. Thank you.